Hello, non-feminist men and women everywhere. Today is Monday, the 7th of September, 2015. Welcome to episode number 62 of the Vanguard Report. The Vanguard Report is the home of strict anti-feminism, standing up against hegemonic feminism and working to effect the demise of it is why we are here. Stopping feminism comes first. So-called men's rights can wait a bit. Once we have paved the way for it, that battle will be 3/4 won. As for feminism, feminism will never reform feminism. That is because the parts in need of correction are essential features of feminism and not bugs. So any feminist correction of feminism would only replicate those features and give us more feminism. You can't solve the problem by working from the same mindset which created the problem. In other words, you can't solve the feminist problem by working from the feminist mindset. Non-feminist correction of feminism is the only alternative, but such intervention would alter what is essential to feminism and finally give us no feminism at all. Feminism is not reformable. Why do you think we call our gig the non-feminist revolution? Revolution is not reform. Revolution is not reform. No. Revolution is revolution. Reform is not revolution. That's why we call it the non-feminist revolution. So, feminism will never correct what is wrong with feminism because that would dismantle what is essential to feminism in the first place, which would put an end to feminism. Full stop. The output would not be feminism. It would be something else, but it wouldn't be feminism. So, turning to a closely related theme, feminist information. You see, for the same reason that feminism will never correct feminism, no feminist, barring the most extreme radicals, will tell you what feminism really is, because that would reveal what is wrong with feminism, which would in turn cry out for correction. But correction would dismantle what is essential to feminism in the first place and effectively put an end to feminism. So you can't rely on feminist information to tell you about feminism. You can trust feminist information only to keep you in the dark about feminism. That is why non-feminist intervention into the pathway of knowledge is the only way to shed light on what feminism really is. That is why we say that feminism is what we say it is. So, I'm Fiedelbogen. This is episode number 62 of the Vanguard Report. I am here today with my fellow host, Nick Redding, man of Canada, true son of the Alberta Prairie. And Nick, say hello.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick Redding with mensrightsedmonton.com. You can, the Men's Rights Edmonton project exists to broadcast the fact that I am active as an anti-feminist or a men's rights activist or an egalitarian or whatever you like, as long as it is an activated non-feminist here in Edmonton. And if you are in the Edmonton area, or if you know anyone in the Edmonton area who is going in that same direction, you can come and hang out with me. And today I would like to give a special shout out to YouTube user Marking Bad, who I believe is listening to us right now. But that's my opening, my introduction.
Marking Bad. That's great. I love it. All right. Thank you, Nick. Since Nick didn't say it, I'm going to add right now, go to mensrightsedmonton.com, look at the website. Also, go to the Men's Rights Edmonton YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, type Men's Rights Edmonton into their search engine, and that'll get you there.
Yeah, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Men's Rights Ed. I should have mentioned that too.
Oh, and Nick, now that you mentioned Twitter, that reminds me, although I've been on Twitter for quite a while, and I invite everybody to be my Twitter follower. That would be at Fidelbogen, Fidelbogen, at Fidelbogen. Be my Twitter follower. But I wanted to add today that I just got me a Tumblr. Somebody talked me into becoming a Tumblrite. So for about 3 days now, I've had a Tumblr account, just getting off the ground slowly here, and I've put a few items in there. But it's, well, look up Fidelbogen on Tumblr. I don't recall what the address was. Fidelbogentumblr.com. Gosh, I don't remember. Anyway, I'm on Tumblr. If you're on Tumblr, be my follower on Tumblr. I want to get some kind of a snowball rolling on Tumblr. Got to spread out into different parts of cyberspace in order to preach the gospel. All right, let's get down to our cue list for this episode. Cue number 1. This is a tweet that I put out on Twitter several days ago, and I just wanted to call your attention to this briefly. I think it's a great little piece of propaganda. Let's go there. Well, I'm going to go there right now anyway. I got it up in my browser. This is a tweet that I retweeted. It is a graphic image, and I'll describe it to you briefly. It shows a young woman in 3/4 profile, close up on her face, and the caption on the photograph right to the left of her face, it says, "I was raped." Seriously, I was raped. But thanks to feminism and all the bullshit talk about rape culture these days, nobody takes me seriously. Thanks a lot, feminism. And then below that, at the bottom of the picture, it says, false rape accusations don't just hurt men. They hurt everybody. Now, I like this. I like this little propaganda meme here. And it's on the list. And you can go there. I would like you to retweet it. I think it's great. And let me talk about that just briefly. Normally, I am irritated, as many of us are, when somebody says that, false accusations will deter real victims from coming forth. And when I hear that, I am, of course, quite unhappy that they say nothing about the fact that the false accusation has done something bad to a man, possibly destroyed his life in a serious way. The fact that they seem to neglect that. Now, you look at this thing right here, and at first glance, you might think that it's in the same category, but I have to say, look what it says. It says, thanks to feminism and all the bullshit talk about rape culture these days, nobody takes me seriously. Thanks a lot, feminism. Okay? Now, I grant you that this doesn't talk about the victim of false accusation. It doesn't refer to that problem. But boy, what it does do, it puts the heat on feminism. It puts the heat on the feminist idea of rape culture. This socks it to feminism. Thanks to feminism and all the bullshit talk about rape culture these days, nobody takes me seriously. That really, really pins the rap on feminism in a way that burns. And you know what? I like it. Thanks to feminism and all the bullshit talk about rape culture these days, nobody takes me seriously. Thanks a lot, feminism. And that's it. That's about pretty much all I wanted to say about this. But again, I would ask everybody to go there, click on that link, and retweet that tweet on Twitter. Thank you very much. Everybody do that. Now let's move along into the program. Unless, Nick, you want to say something?
Well, just in general, my opinion always is, if I do think that rape is something that should be taken very seriously, but believing every single claim is not taking it seriously. It's taking it hysterically. Like, if this person actually is a victim of rape, and I have no reason to doubt or believe her story. It's just someone holding up a sign, right? But
well, actually, Nick, it's not somebody holding up a sign. This is a person, probably not an actual rape victim, probably just a stock image that somebody took and photoshopped in, and there's a caption next to it. But anyway.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So there you go. I mean, anybody. But yeah. I mean, if people want to take the crime of rape seriously, if we should be taking it seriously means considering that complainants may possibly be lying, or they may have actually been victimized. That is taking a complaint seriously, and that's sustainable, right? If you've got constant hysteria going on, where you're saying that you should believe absolutely every accusation, that's just setting up the pendulum to go back in the other direction, where nobody believes anyone who comes forward.
That's not taking it seriously. That's taking it just the opposite of seriously.
Yeah. So that's what I have to say about that.
So I think taking it seriously means taking it in a reality-based way. We need all the reality we can get as opposed to unreality. Unreality will just lead us further and further into unreality and away from reality, and that's a dangerous situation to be in. So, yeah, anyway, thank you, feminism, for making people callous and cynical about the whole idea of rape. Feminism is not helping with the rape situation. It's hurting a lot of people with all of its rape hysteria, with the culture of rape hysteria that it's fomenting in society. So, thanks a lot, feminism. Anyway, speaking of feminism, well, we want to get down to the nitty-gritty here. What is feminism really? We want to know, speaking of reality, we want to know the reality of feminism. We want to expose the reality of feminism as opposed to the myth of feminism, which is what your typical feminist seeks to propagate. The feminist will seek to propagate the myth of feminism. We wish to propagate the reality. We need to balance the unreality with reality. We think that's a good, sensible thing to do. And people like to tell you that radical feminism is just the fringe of feminism, just the extremists. Well, no, I disagree. Radical feminism is not the fringe of feminism. It's not on the edge. It's not somewhere out on the perimeter, somewhere out on the circumference. It is right in the middle. In fact, radical feminism is feminism's rotten core and the source of feminism's life. And without radical feminism, feminism at large would amount to very little, and it would very quickly scatter to the four winds. And that, my friends, is the whole truth and nothing other. However, it is a truth that plenty of people won't square up to. It is quite fashionable nowadays, especially in the wake of the Agent Orange scandal, to brush aside radical feminism as something which is outdated and generally disregarded. And when people do this, they are trying to change the subject and reassert control of the conversation so as to remove the feminist project at large from the critical spotlight. Well, that's feminists that are doing that. Non-feminists who do that just, they're politically stupid. They don't know what the hell's going on. But that's a different conversation for a different day. Now, all right. Radical feminism, by which I mean chiefly the man-hating kind. That's what radical feminism is, man-hating feminism. And the more man-hating it is, the more radical it is. Man-hating feminism is a standard which sets the measure for feminism as a whole. All brands of feminism are either more or less relevant or significant, depending on how closely they approximate radical feminism. That is, depending on how man-hating they are. Radical feminism is 100 proof, and a radical feminist takes her feminism neat. Others take theirs watered down. But in the end, it's all the same drink. People love to tell you that the radfems are just fringe extremists, as if we were standing in a field and the radfems were some tight little cluster, cut off in their own little world on the perimeter. What the speaker fails to consider is that all feminism is on a continuum whose unifying principle is disaffection toward men and things male. That's all it is. And if you study feminism objectively, you can form no other conclusion. There is no break, no gap, no discontinuity between radical feminism and the rest of feminism. It is a moral plenum, fully packed. For every foul man-hater, there is a slightly less foul man-hater, then a slightly less foul one than that, and down the line it goes, shade by shade. For example, Amanda Marcotte is only half as bad, let's say, as Mary Daly, but comparatively speaking, that's still pretty damn bad. So, is Mary Daly unacceptable while Amanda gets a pass? Where should we set the cutoff? That's the point I would make. Where should we set the cutoff? If we were to address the radical man-hating gangrene as a serious issue, we would morally quarantine. We would morally amputate the phenomenon. But in order for that to happen, we would need to establish a moral threshold to effectively quantify how much systemic man-hating, how much, mind you, how much systemic man-hating we can theoretically live with. How much can we tolerate in the system and in our lives and in our culture? Anything above the cutoff might be denounced and ostracized, but there would still be a boundary of acceptability, and that is just the problem. The stench of misandry wouldn't be quite so overpowering anymore, but it would still be present and permanent and tolerated, and it would still taint feminism as a whole. Eventually, we might feel obligated to repeat the whole process, to hack off more of the rotten end and set the cap a little lower. If we were moved to do this time and again, there would soon be precious little of feminism remaining. Now that ought to teach us that the apologists and deflectionists are right. We oughtn't be so fixated on the extremists. The rot extends clear through the feminist organism to some degree, and examples closer to home of casual misandry or mere perverse ignorance are never lacking. Every chance we get, we should point out the pervasive anti-male bias, be this subtle or brazen. Anti-male bias, whether in the form of hating men or looking looking the other way when evidence of man-hating crops up, or simply the prevalence of double standards which favor women, is recognizable as the core principle which makes feminism feminism. This principle, more than anything, binds the feminist project together, moves it forward, and explains the complex reality of its evolvement through time. The feminist project seeks to expand the power of women with no limit, and anything like ethical regard for men and maleness would impose a formidable barrier to such expansion. Remove that ethical regard, and the frontier is wide open. Hence, so far as the feminist project is concerned, ethical regard for men and maleness has got to go. And what better way to shuck off ethical regard for anything than to hate it? Since the world always contains X number of women who hate men, and even men who hate men, feminism's inner cadre always has a sufficient recruitment pool. Hate is a tremendous motivator, and we can hardly account for feminism's vitality on the theory that the real movers and shakers are only mildly annoyed with men. Feminism needs to have that man-hating core to give it drive, to give it motivation, to give it purpose. Take away that radical man-hating core, and there wouldn't be much to feminism at all. In the end, if feminism did not harbor a kind of moral black hole of infinite disaffection toward men and maleness, it would quickly reach the limit of its possible development and begin to dissipate. So once again, radical feminism, to wit the man-hating kind, is the core of feminism, the core. By contrast, it is the liberals, the moderates, the humanists, and the fun feminists who make up the fluffy fringe on feminism's perimeter. Those people are not the core of feminism. Those people are out on the edge. Radical feminism is the sun. Liberal moderate feminists, they're the Kuiper Belt. They're out around Pluto somewhere. They are the useful idiots who serve mainly as camouflage and as ideological pack mules. Those who say that radical feminism is marginal to feminism at large are lying, either to you or to themselves. And I rest my case for now. Nick, are you inspired to say anything at the moment?
Yeah, it's. I mean, any like people. The way people could easily recognize this is any amount of. I mean, any amount of blaming, like. Uh, um, the way feminists talk about men having privilege, men having more privilege than they deserve. Vernaculus covered this on his coverage um, of the debate on free speech that was had at Oxford University recently. The way she taught, the way I can't remember her name. They're calling her Big Purple now. The way she spoke about privileged white men was very similar to the way people talked about to Hitler's propaganda about the Jews in uh, pre World War II Germany, or during World War II rather. Uh, um,
Well, pre-war, pre-war also, I think.
yeah, yeah, both of them. But when you um, there's like even like the smallest amount, no matter how much you talk about um, feminists being oppressed, women being oppressed by the patriarchy, you can water that down as much as you like, but it's still identifying straight white men and their maleness as having too much power and having power that they got through ill-gotten gain. It's the exact same thing.
Nick, I should add, it's not straight white men, it's men, full stop.
Well, okay, I mean, straight white men who are apparently, the worst perpetrators, right? If you're black or gay or black and gay, then you kind of, apparently you're lower down
On the
on
oppression
the
ladder, yeah.
yeah, but which is ridiculous. I mean, like you can look at life expectancies of people in the U.S. Right? I'm Canadian, but it goes like like the demographic with the longest life expectancy is white women, and then it's and then it's black women actually, and then it's white men, and then black men. So
Well,
yeah, I mean, I think that would probably be one of the greatest indicators of privilege right there is one's life comparative life expectancy.
yeah.
Um,
You got a good
but
life, you live longer, that stands to reason.
yeah, but yeah, that's um, anybody like I actually made a video about this. It's called the Men's Rights Edmonton vlog number 5, I believe. No, vlog number 4 or 5, or it's the one that you did the introduction to a few years ago, if you
Yes,
recall.
I recall, yeah.
And basically, I said, any kind of feminism that asserts that women currently get or have historically gotten the short end of the stick is hateful, and I make my argument for it in that video. I'll see if I can dig it up and pop it in the chat here. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that for now.
All right. Well, so let's carry on with this thematic trajectory about radical feminism and real feminism and the fringe of feminism, etc., etc. Yeah, radical feminism is the real deal. It's the real feminism. Everything else is watered down. Okay? Listen to what the radical feminists are saying if you want to know the real quintessential nitty-gritty truth about feminism. Feminism in its entirety. It's good cop, bad cop, right? Pay no attention to the good cop. He's just there to lead you astray from what the bad cop is doing or intends to do. And on that note, cue number 2 on your cue list. This is something that came up quite recently, and boy, it's a bombshell. It's a stunner. It's a shocker. Let me read it to you. This is from a blog called Hequal. That's equal with an H stuck in front of the E. Hequal. Get it? Get it? Hequal, equal. Okay. Hateful Guardian writer Julie Bindle proposes feminazi concentration camps for all men. Boy, there's that hysterical, melodramatic word, feminazi, which, by the way, I think is a perfectly good word. you got feminists out there in the world who act and talk very much like Nazis, who are of the same aura as Nazis. But it's not okay to call attention to the fact that such people exist. Yeah, feminazis are a thing. They're out there, and I, for one, do not propose to ignore them. I do not propose to look the other way when they do the things they do and say the things they say. Yes, there are such things as feminazis, and we need to talk about them because they're a problem. Hateful Guardian writer Julie Bindle proposes feminazi concentration camps for all men. Now, Julia Bindle is a radical lesbian feminist activist in Great Britain. And boy, is she ever toxic. Let's dig into the article. We have a nice little radical feminazi flag icon. It combines the swastika with the clenched fist inside of the circle. So it combines the symbolism of National Socialism with radical feminism. And that logo is set upon the circular white background, which is set in the background of the red flag. So it mimics the Nazi flag rather closely. Julie Bindle is a misandrist feminist who is a regular columnist for the Guardian newspaper. Okay, feminism is powerful. If a person like Julie Bindle can be a regular columnist for a publication as prestigious as the Guardian, what does that tell you about the relative cultural standing of radical feminism? Julie Bindle is a misandrist feminist who is a regular columnist for the Guardian newspaper, having written hundreds of articles for the publication. Boy, they must like her. They let her write hundreds of articles for their publication. She's a patron for charities such as For Our Daughters and is the founder of Justice for Women. Well, sounds nice. For Our Daughters, Justice for Women. She's a regular fixture in the media, particularly on BBC's Women's Hour program, and she's a research fellow at Lincoln University. Oh, and she also wants to introduce concentration camps for all men, a group she doesn't actually even regard as human. And let me pause here for a moment. A concentration camp is not the same thing as a death camp, in case anybody doesn't know. A concentration camp is a place where they take undesirable people they want to control or keep out of the way for some reason, and they concentrate them, literally concentrate them into a camp, hence the name concentration camp. Okay. The conditions in a concentration camp can be horrendous, but a concentration camp is not specifically the same thing as a death camp. A death camp is a camp where they herd people together just for the purpose of killing them off slowly. Concentration camps are a pretty bad thing. They're not quite as bad as death camps, I suppose. It doesn't mean people don't get killed there, but anyway, just wanted to draw that distinction. Bindle's literal feminazi movement came in an interview with the RadFem Collective website on August 29th. And there's a link to that interview there. You can go look at it, see the original, see the source. On August 29th, upon being asked the question, will heterosexuality survive women's liberation, Bindle responded as follows. It won't, not unless men get their act together, have their power taken from them, and behave themselves. I mean, I would actually put them all in some kind of camp where they can all drive around in quad bikes or bicycles or white vans. I would give them a choice of vehicles to drive around with, give them no porn. They wouldn't be able to fight. We would have wardens, of course. Women who want to see their sons or male loved ones would be able to go and visit or take them out like a library book and then bring them back. I hope heterosexuality doesn't survive, actually. I would like to see a truce on heterosexuality. I would like an amnesty on heterosexuality until we have sorted ourselves out, because under patriarchy, it's shit. And I am sick of hearing from individual women that their men are all right. Those men have been shored up by the advantages of patriarchy, and they are complacent. They are not stopping other men from being shit. Okay? Well, I could say something similar of feminists. Anyway, I would love to see a women's liberation that results in women turning away from men and saying, when you come back as human beings, we might look again. All right, this ends the quotation from Julie Bindle. So we see what kind of person Julie Bindle is. She's seriously not right in the head. There's something wrong with this Julie Bindle. And I think most people, the majority, the clear majority of people anywhere on earth would agree to that. Okay, this is feminism. This is radical feminism, but it is feminism.
Well, hold on. You say that a lot of people, the majority of people would agree to that. They might agree to that in public.
Well, that's pretty much what I meant. Yeah.
But when you you know, who was it? I think it was in the War on Boys, or so. Someone said that the way boys are treated in school, girls are treated as the gold standard, and boys are treated as defective girls. And that was my experience in elementary school. That was my father's experience in Catholic school in the '60s. You know, there are a lot of people who are looking after kids who treat maleness as like, you know, would come when she said you come back when you're fully human.
Men are not fully human.
Right.
Men are not regarded as fully human.
And that is definitely a sentiment that you see out of a lot of so-called you know, liberals or moderates or even people who don't identify as feminists. It's a very, very common belief, right? And I mean, you see it, like even a lot of like guys who are into like sports and stuff, right? Like manly men seem to have the same opinion that women are fully human just by virtue of being women, and men have to get somewhere. There's some standard that they have to meet. It's never quite clear what it is because, you know, it's not anything they can ever achieve, because
if it was clear what it was, then they would quickly achieve it, and that would be the end of the game, and they couldn't keep the game going.
Yeah. It's really sad. It's really depressing. But the attitude among a lot of people is that men are men are just Untermenschen. They're just bad.
Right.
And you know, like they keep telling us that there's ways we can improve, but it's just flagellation.
Well, I'm glad you brought all of those points up, Nick, because of course you're absolutely right, and I agree with everything you've just said. But you know, we can't just say everything all at once. Sometimes we have to kind of express our thoughts one bite at a time. But yes, feminism is very much one with the culture around it. It's not always clear where feminism ends and the rest of the culture begins, and that this is the secret of feminism's strength to a very large degree. And anti-male bias, gynocentrism, empathy apartheid, male disposability, all of these things are part of a common underlying theme, which has always existed in traditional culture, and which feminism, far from doing away with, has simply taken up and put on a different track and developed in a new direction, a direction that we call gynonormativism. Feminism has just taken what was toxic and what was anti-male in the traditional culture and set it on a new track and made it worse. And feminism has no intention of doing away with any of that. You hear feminists say, you know, blame the patriarchy for all of that. Well, feminism is the patriarchy. There is no clear separation between feminism and this this thing that they loosely call the patriarchy. But that all, well, patriarchy, when feminists talk about the patriarchy, they just mean male power. But traditional culture, which some people might take to be synonymous with the patriarchy, although it's more complex than that, traditional culture is thoroughly on board with 3/4 of the feminist program. All feminism does is take away whatever power or position men had under the traditional system of life and take that away and give it to women. But feminism has no intention of lifting any burdens off of men. And I think this is a dangerous state of affairs, which, if allowed to continue, will just lead to one disaster after another. And I'm not saying this to promote men's rights. I'm saying this because I want to expose a situation that presents a danger to all of the human race. It's a toxic state of affairs. It's like having gunpowder and gasoline stored in the basement of your house. That's just not a good idea. There's going to be trouble eventually, and especially when you keep toting more cans of gasoline down there and more kegs of gunpowder. Okay, would you want to live on top of a stash of gasoline and gunpowder? If you're smart, probably not. But anyway, we go on stashing gasoline and gunpowder in our basement, and eventually, there's going to be a spark somewhere. Anyway, continuing with the article. So let's examine Bindle's views and proposals. Firstly, she wants the power to be taken away from men. While a small number of men hold considerable power in the business world, Bindle's statement is farcical when it comes to the overwhelming majority of the population. Higher education is now completely female-dominated. Young women earn significantly more than young men, and this supposedly powerful gender absolutely dominates when it comes to low life expectancy, homelessness, workplace death and injury, imprisonment, suffering violence, and committing suicide. Next, Bindle proposes camps for men, not just the men who might be breaking the law, we already have those, of course, but all men, just simply for daring to be born male. As with similar concentration camp schemes, Bindle tries to briefly distract from her gender hatred and true agenda by adding in some fun activities, and therefore perhaps implying they'd be holiday-type destinations. However, it's made very clear exactly what sort of camps these are, as Bindle proposes camp guards, or wardens as she calls them. In true Goebbels style, Bindle disguises the real purpose of these guards by pretending their job is to stop the men fighting amongst themselves, glossing over their main activity, which is, of course, to control, punish, and imprison the entire male population against their will, and to make them entirely powerless objects to be borrowed by women. Bindle adds in the final missing piece of the feminazi Bindle adds in the final missing piece of the feminazi jigsaw by adding in more than a bit of dehumanization of the men for good measure, likening them to library books that are property for women to borrow. She rounds off her proposals by making it explicitly clear that she doesn't even consider men to be human beings at present. Taken as a whole, her proposals not only meet but massively exceed any definition of a concentration camp. One of Bindle's most recent media appearances was on Sky News, during which she rightly, albeit for the wrong reasons, attacked Jeremy Corbyn's proposals to consider introducing women-only carriages on trains. What Bindle failed to mention was that she was willing to go further than Corbyn, and of course her proposals above would result in every single train carriage being women-only, because all of the men would be in her concentration camps. Furthermore, seeing as she's stealing most of her ideas from Nazis, presumably she'll want to use men-only cattle trucks too for transportation of the subhuman inmates to their destination. In the feminist world, Bindle's views are far from isolated, and she's just the latest in a long line of high-profile feminists to propose either imprisoning all men or even eliminating or exterminating all or the vast majority of the male population. Bindle's fellow travelers in this regard include the author of the Scum Manifesto, Valerie Solanas, the academic Mary Daly, for whom Bindle wrote a glowing obituary, and also Sally Miller Gearhart, an author who also worked at San Francisco State University. Nor is this an isolated incident in terms of Bindle's behavior. For example, in 2006, she wrote a Guardian column titled "Why I Hate Men," and her writing regularly attacks men as a whole. Her writing regularly attacks men as a whole, falsely paints violence and abuse as gendered, something done by men to women rather than by people to other people. More recently, feminist hatred of men has made the news with incidents involving Bahar Mustafa at Goldsmiths University and Lib Dem Executive Committee member Sarah Noble at the NUS conference, a story broken exclusively by Hequal. It's interesting that the one common theme that almost every piece of feminist hate is the involvement of the higher education system. Okay, Mustafa is the diversity officer at Goldsmiths Students Union who banned white men from events and called for their death on Twitter. Noble's misandry came to light due to her calls to ban men from society at the NUS Women's Conference, with her Twitter account also littered with misandrist hate speech, and she's since started a new job at the NUS too. Daly was a professor at Boston College who didn't just want men to be reduced to 10% of the population. She infamously kicked male students out of her classes too. Gearhart worked at a university for decades too, and therefore it's little surprise to see that Bindle is a research fellow at Lincoln University and has previously held a position at both Leeds and Brunel universities too. Numerous other feminist extremists also work in institutions in places such as the Northeast and in Bristol, with others exposed in a leak of info from the radfem hub website. And that links to a Voice for Men article, AVFM article. It's little wonder that we have such a huge gender education gap when so many universities are hotbeds of unopposed gender hatred. I realize that Bindle does at least get some condemnation from some feminists for her views on trans women, and while this is somewhat welcome, there is a hugely problematic double standard at work which totally undermines such condemnation. Any feminist hatred of trans women almost always stems from the fact that trans women used to be men, and the feminists still regard trans women as 100% male. While other more direct forms of transphobia do exist out there, almost all feminist transphobia ultimately stems not so much from hatred of trans people themselves, but from their extreme misandry. Thus, most feminist protests against transphobia by fellow feminists is often almost completely hypocritical and constitutes little more than faux outrage. Those feminists opposing Bindle are usually the same people spending vast amounts of time attacking and demonizing men and celebrating misandry, thus making them at the forefront of the root cause of the problem, and ultimately little different to Bindle herself in the wider scheme of things. It's easy to dismiss Bindle's comments as being extreme and not representative of real feminism. However, take out the concentration camp remarks and other extreme content, and much of what's left not only constitutes mainstream feminist thought, but even the policy of public bodies and academic institutions, and I might add the United Nations and the European Union. Okay, many of the sexist phrases and ideas presented by Bindle could easily have come from the Director of Public Prosecutions, Alison Saunders, Acting Labour Party leader Harriet Harman, Northumbria Police and Crime Commissioner Vera Bard, or even Liberal Democrat politicians such as Lynn Featherstone. And all sorts of current policies and public services are outrageously biased against men, not to mention completely dishonest in their use and presentation of data. Feminists regularly complain about the use of terms such as feminazi. Boo-hoo. Feminists regularly complain about the use of terms such as feminazi as if it's an outrageous and completely unjustifiable slur. Yet Bindle's proposals and dehumanizing language might as well be lifted from a Nazi manifesto, and the silence from feminists in condemning her and all those listed above is deafening. Feminists have plenty of time to get outraged by a harmless shirt worn by a respected scientist. They'll misrepresent a clear joke by, speaking of shirts, I can't help but to add in the I Am a Feminist t-shirts made by sweatshop labor in, what country was it? Madagascar? I forget. Okay.
It was India. It was India that the little old the middle-aged Indian women were they were working in sweatshops. I'm pretty sure it was India.
Being exploited to help the cause of women. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, that certainly warms my heart. Feminists have plenty of time to get outraged by a harmless shirt worn by a respected scientist. They'll misrepresent a clear joke by Tim Hunt to get him fired from his job. They'll campaign endlessly about how men sit on trains and assault them if said seating position is not to their liking. This is a reference to the man-spreading crisis. And then next priority on their agenda is to interfere with the way men go to the toilet. Yes, that's serious. There is a move afoot here and there, especially in places like Sweden, to get men to urinate sitting down, to almost make it obligatory. Okay. However, it's now a week since one of the most high-profile feminist commentators openly suggested putting all men on concentration camps until they become human beings, and there's not a word of condemnation anywhere. Not a word of condemnation anywhere. This didn't stir up any kind of a ruckus. Why is Julie Bindle writing for The Guardian in the first place? Why don't they kick her ass out of there? Why do they have somebody like Julie Bindle on staff at all? The Guardian, one of the preeminent publications in England. And they have that parasite working for them. Why? You've got to ask why. Okay, however, it's now a week since one of the most high-profile feminist commentators openly suggested putting all men in concentration camps until they become human beings, and there's not a word of condemnation anywhere. Until that changes and feminists start condemning misandry instead of celebrating it, then the feminazi term is quite clearly 100% justifiable, and particularly so in reference to anyone associated with Bindle or the organizations she works for. Note: can people please stop linking to the blog in question where the hate comments are published? The article in question is saved on archive.org and is counterproductive to reward extreme gender hatred with web traffic and therefore potential revenue. And there we have it. That's the article. Wow, that's a lot. I would like everybody to spread this any way they can through their social media or by any method. Twitter, Tumblr, you name it. Spread it around. You've got the link there. Go there and make this popularly, generally known. Nick, anything you want to chime in about here?
Yeah, I personally do object to the term. Well, not object to the term feminazi. I don't like to use it, just because of Godwin's law. Like I know that earlier I was talking about the same thing. Like earlier I was making the comparisons to specifically Hitler and his anti-Semitic propaganda and comparing it to the anti-male propaganda. But the term feminazi is just as a as a pejorative. I think tactically it's unsound, because a lot of people like me hear it and go, Godwin's law. You know, it's a non-starter in a lot of circumstances. I think that you can. It's the same way with the term mangina. You know, we don't particularly care for the term mangina around here. In the
Yeah, I
Vanguard
know I
Report.
don't. I use
Yeah.
that word sparingly, like maybe twice a year.
Yeah, and it's not because I'm a Puritan. It's not because I don't like bad language or anything like that. It's just because because of the feel that it has to it. It's the way it doesn't push people in the way that I want to push them.
It,
You know
it,
what I
it
mean?
sounds like schoolyard gutter language.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I don't have any problem with schoolyard gutter language,
No,
but
it has its place.
yeah.
We got schoolyards. Might as well have schoolyard language.
Yeah, but it's just when I behave sophomorically and immature, it's always very calculated and very
It's
implemented.
theater, man. It's
Yeah,
theater.
yeah. When I'm trying to have a serious discussion about something, things like terms like mangina and feminazi, they just kind of get in the way. They just kind of muddy the waters, is all.
Yeah, they do. I agree. So, no, I don't use the word. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Nick. I don't use the word feminazi. I have no moral objection or any kind of objection to the word feminazi. It's just that, like anything, it's like any other cliche. I could object to this on grounds of style. You say something too much, it becomes a cliche, and it has the drawbacks that any cliche would have. And feminazi is a cliche, and I get really bored. My eyes glaze over when I'm dealing with people who just constantly ragging on about feminazi this and feminazi that. That gets old.
Yeah, although the term social justice warrior. First of all, it's a mouthful.
It
It's
is. We've got to come up with we've got to come up with an alternative to social justice warrior. Social justice wanker has a nice bite to it, but it's still a mouthful.
May I recommend dogmatista? That
Okay.
was what I called them before back when I was dealing with them, and I didn't realize
Yeah.
that the rest of the internet was against them too. But let's get back on topic here.
Well, I just want to put in here briefly. Dogmatista. It's a good description of what these people are, but on its face, it doesn't really draw any clear line of reference.
Well,
You say dogmatista, most people won't know what you're talking about, at least right off the bat.
no, but super left-wing politicos get it.
Oh, if you're targeting those, if you're targeting those people, and yeah, then I guess that hits their brain in the right spot. Anyway, so that's it for the article. So we have a theme for this episode, and that is radical feminism, and that is the fact that radical feminism is, well, it's radical, and the word radical means what? Nick, what does the word radical mean? I keep forgetting.
Means the root.
That's right, it means the root. The root.
That's right. We have all kinds of North American pronunciations of words here on the Vanguard Report.
I'm sorry, Nick. You missed me there. What happened?
No, I say root, you say root. It's just funny, is all.
Oh, actually, I kind of switch back and forth. Sometimes I say root, sometimes I say root. I'm not sure which one. I guess I'm kind of linguistically schizophrenic on that one. Anyway, so yeah, the root of I guess root is what I say more than root. And I guess when I want to say root 66, I don't say root 66. I say root 66. And then of course then there's route 66, but I don't say that. I say root 66, and I say root when I say the root of a plant or the root of a tree.
In any case, radical feminism is, by its name, by definition, it is the root of it. It's the distilled. It is the 100% proof. Or the 100 proof rather.
It's 100 proof. It's what the plant or the tree grows from, and something else important is that it's buried underground in the earth where you can't see it, for the most part. And dragging it out into the sunlight, when you uproot a plant, a tree, whatever, what happens to that plant or that tree? It doesn't stick around for long. Okay, you want to kill a plant, you uproot it, and you expose the roots to the sunlight. You put them on the surface. They can't draw nutrition from the soil anymore. They're exposed. So that's the way you want to kill something, you uproot it. So radical is the root. Where was I going with my train of thought before we started talking about North American pronunciations here?
Well, you think you wanted to impart to the audience that radical feminism is not on the fringe of it, not even by its own definition.
I should say that's not its own definition. I mean, I've spoken with feminists before who take exception with my understanding of what radical means.
Yeah, well, they will always take a word and just say, if it doesn't work for, they're never wrong no matter what. The way you're using the word,
exactly. They're never wrong.
Yeah.
And then a week later, in a different conversation, the same thing that was wrong is right if it fits that conversation and makes them right.
Yeah,
a week later.
And then if you point out that discrepancy, then you're just quibbling and you're wrong again. Right?
If they even remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm not frustrated with you. I'm frustrated with what you're describing.
I understand. Okay, I understand. But radical feminism, the way I see it, because I mean, after all, we are reclaiming the language here. We are radically. I mean, we too are radicals. What we are doing is a radical project. Radical means from the root or of the root. But anything, in a larger sense, anything which goes to the root or addresses the root or concerns the root of anything, it gets to the root of the matter, gets to the foundation of the matter, that too, in a sense, is radical. When you're talking about the foundation of things or the root of things in any sense at all, you're talking radical. Okay? And when you really dig into things, well, not surprisingly, you dig down into the soil and you come to the roots. And this is what, of course, the middle mass doesn't understand. The middle mass does not have a radical sense of the situation here, the radical nature of the situation. So our job in bringing people into the activated non-feminist sector is pretty much, in a nutshell, to radicalize them, to make them aware of the roots of things. The roots of feminism, the roots of the whole situation. And so anyway, radical feminism is the core of feminism. It's the root of feminism. It's the real deal. It's the pure drink straight from the barrel. It's the reason for the season. It's the oil, the crude oil straight from the well. It's not the fringe. And this idea that radical feminism is just the fringe, that's the biggest deception that they do. That's how they pull the wool over your eyes. They don't want you to look at the radical feminists, but then if you don't look at radical feminism, you're not looking at feminism. You don't know what feminism is. Anyway, another theme I wanted to bring up here, these radical feminists, they can't keep their mouths shut. They're an embarrassment to the rest of feminism. They're not the real feminists. They're just on the fringe, and yet Julie Bindle has written, what, 200 or 500 articles for The Guardian, and that's off on the fringe somewhere. That's close to the center of power. That's close to the center of power. Feminist ideas are everywhere. And the great bulk, when they say not all feminists are like that, well, that's true in a way. If by like that, you mean, well, okay, let's back up here a little bit. They're not like that because they're clever at hiding it. They're not like that because they don't say it out there in the open. They don't drag their roots out into the sunlight. You know, for every radical feminist like Julie Bindle who comes right out and says it, there's 100 others who know how to keep their mouths shut and work quietly. And then there are, as I suggested earlier, shades or degrees of radicalness, namely man-hating. There's feminists out there who are not quite as radical, not quite as extreme as Julie Bindle. Okay, I mean, you would never hear Amanda Marcotte, Jessica Valenti, or people like that, who, by the way, are also powerful people who write for prestigious publications. You would not hear those people talking about putting men into concentration camps. Now, they might be thinking about it in the privacy of their brains. They might be thinking about it, but they're smart enough to not say it. Of course, what they do say is bad enough anyway. I mean, they talk about toxic masculinity all the time, and they're dishonest and bigoted and snarky and nasty. Anybody can see the kind of people they are. And Jessica Valenti really has no problem with men being falsely accused of rape. She's fine with that. She never said it, but you know, you look at her remarks about Swedish feminism, her admiration for the Swedish model of dealing with rape, and her suggestion that maybe we should learn from that and maybe import it into the USA. She doesn't quite come out and say it, but if you look and you draw the inference from her word, the implications from her words, you can see that yeah, she doesn't take false accusation of rape very seriously. No, neither does Amanda Marcotte. I mean, feminists are just foul people, and it's just a question of how foul. Some are extremely rotten, some are less rotten. It is hatred of men and things male which is the core, the root, the radical defining feature of feminism, all of it. And it's just a matter of degree. And the nice feminists are just the thin curtain covering that mass of pustulence and corruption.
Yeah, I mean, like you know, my history is with the social justice kind of hippie crowd, and when I started coming out against feminism,
don't you know, let's not slander hippies. Hippies are mostly, you know, pretty cool people.
Well, the hippie community was one of many that's been taken over, right? A lot of people have pointed out that the gamers were the first real opposition that social justice had when it co-opting communities. But
yeah, the social justice warriors, the ones with the tie-dye and the Birkenstock with the funny glazed look in their eyes and the robotic tone of voice. These you know, these are hippies that have been taken over.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like I was in the marijuana legalization community and all that. And when I started coming out against that, the hippies in there, the hippie girls in there, they really they couldn't. They tried. They couldn't keep their disgust veiled for very long.
They're disgust. I'm sorry, Nick. They're disgust for what now?
Me coming out against feminism. And they're, I mean.
Okay.
they're
In other words, you're saying that these quote unquote hippie chicks had been indoctrinated into feminism.
yes, and when you start challenging feminism around them, then their man hate starts coming to the surface. Uh, like because you can't discuss any feminist doctrine without you can't challenge any of them without them coming up with a justification that is intrinsically hateful towards men.
Intrinsically anti-male or anti-male biased
Yeah, I
in
mean,
some way.
if you're talking about men as a demographic that are um, more likely to molest children, that's pretty fucking hateful. You know,
Using the phrase toxic masculinity, I don't care where, I don't care in what context, any use of that phrase.
I don't. I think there are kinds of masculinity that are pretty toxic.
There are male people who are toxic. There
Well,
are
but
people.
there's kinds of like guyness, like the kind that get market, like the kind of shallow concept of maleness that gets marketed by companies like Spike TV. That would I think I would qualify that as toxic masculinity.
Well,
But
that's a toxic consumer product.
yeah,
I would still put a taboo on the phrase toxic masculinity, regardless. Even though I agree there are expressions of male nature, or men who express themselves in a toxic way and call that being a real man or something. Yeah.
yeah,
But when the feminists use that term, they're not making that distinction. They're using it as a slur against maleness.
yeah. Yeah, any masculinity that doesn't fall into their paradigm is toxic, according to them. But no, the community that I was in, they didn't use terms like toxic masculinity. And they didn't use the term patriarchy until I started saying that there wasn't one.
Remember, folks, patriarchy. You want to translate fem speak into English? Anytime a feminist says patriarchy, just supply the phrase male power, and you'll perfectly understand what's being said.
Yeah,
Go on, Nick.
any amount of male power is too much. It's any amount of male power oppresses women, according to these people.
And it is patriarchy.
And yeah, again, have you seen that talk on the freedom to offend in Oxford University, Fetal Logan?
I think I did somewhere way back, but my recollection is
It
dim.
recently occurred. Vernaculus covered it.
Maybe I did. Maybe I.
Spinosaurus Kid and Lauren Southern covered it, and even our old friend Diana Davison has been talking a lot about it. I still watch her videos because she makes good stuff. She does.
Well, I was going to say, what was I going to say? Yeah, just drop me a link to that in Skype, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, there's a woman. I can't remember her name now. If someone can help me out in the comments to remember the woman's name. Calling her Big Purple. She had a white shawl over her shoulders. Her whole argument was that she believes in freedom of speech, but in order for freedom of speech to happen, those guys over there, including Peter Hitchens, have to shut up for a while, right? These people, they see power as a zero-sum game. They see the ability to speak as a zero-sum game. So they equate anybody else having the power to speak or power over their own lives as interfering with their rightful power to control them.
Mm-hmm.
This, I think, was also obvious when Christina Hoff Sommers said that she went to go talk at one of her more recent talks at a university, and some young feminist ladies showed up with tape over their mouths to show how they were being silenced by someone else being allowed to speak.
Yeah, well, they were trying to silence Christina Hoff Sommers by putting tape over their mouth. That's what they were doing.
Yeah. But it's Darvo. It's total Darvo.
It's political Darvo is the term I use.
Yeah.
Political Darvo.
Yeah. And if anybody doesn't know what Darvo is, it's deny, attack, reverse victim order. It was actually it's a concept that was come up with by a feminist psychologist.
Interestingly.
Sorry.
And I'm sure that feminist psychologist did not anticipate the use that would be made of that idea by people like us.
Well, something else I want to talk about, because I like to talk about psychological tools and things like that, and strata. Um, the thing is, I always hesitate to come up with any kind of system of classification to help fight feminists, because or feminist or social justice warriors, because the next generation of that will just take it and use it against us. I mean, like like I said last week, I got out of rehab, and the entire the entire staff there was social justice. They were all social justice and feminists and all that stuff, and they had degrees in education in psychology. Yeah, so
they know more than you. They're better than you. They're more evolved than you, etc., etc.
Well, no. When I started talking to the staff there about, like, on 2 occasions, about the value that I placed on reason, their faces fell. They got saddened when I started talking about reason.
Really, this is interesting.
Yeah, and yeah, when I told one of them that I thought that the quintessential, or the penultimate expression of freedom is the use of reason, and when I told the other one that I wanted to see, I basically wanted to take revenge on people who people who reason along the lines of ethos and pathos and completely disregard logos.
Emotional reasoners, I think you mean.
Emotional and authoritarian reasoners.
Okay.
I've told people before in my YouTube videos that I want to take revenge. The big reveal here is that the way that I see revenge being gotten is to promote the use of reason, to make reason the final word in anything. Because I think that if reason is, if we all live under reason, that will be torturous to the unreasonable.
Yes, it will be.
And because right now, it'll be heaven for people like me and hell for people like them if reason matters a good goddamn.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're so used to so many people. I mean, it's not just feminists. Right now, feminism is the current manifestation. But this is what George Orwell wrote in 1984 about it. So many people, they're willing to use they reason along lines of ethos and pathos because it gives them a sense of authority or even actual authority over other people. But it depends. It all depends on lying. I keep on bringing up that quote from Senator Rourke in Sin City when he says that power don't come from a badge or a gun. It comes from lying and lying big. Because when you got everyone going along with what they know in their hearts ain't right, then you got them by the balls. And when you come along and you start promoting reason, and you start saying that evidence matters, and you start providing evidence that contradicts claims made on the basis of authority and feelings. Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Okay, good. When you start making when what is true is dictated by authorities and reinforced by feelings, and does not have a basis in fact and evidence, or evidence and reason whatsoever, then you've got an authority structure of lies. And if you want to look, if someone were to look at the Bible the way I do, as another form of science fiction or another form of narratology, when they talk about the devil ruling this world, that's what you've got. You've got an entirely dishonest structure of authority that relies on whose reasoning relies along lines of ethos and pathos, and if logos, if logos came to be right, the logos being reason and evidence, came to be recognized as the final word in any conversation or any authority, then it would be possibly the kingdom of heaven that people are talking about, or in a manner of speaking, anyway.
The kingdom of heaven would be the eternal reign of the Pan Logos.
Is this Judaism that we're talking about now, or?
We are. Yes. You caught that, Nick. You're sharp.
The Church of the Reason of the Sensible Shoe. Anyway, that's another topic for another discussion. But what it comes down to is I don't know how we got. I can't remember how I got off on this tangent. About the people in the institutions getting sad when I talked about the importance of reason. And because if reason is used, if reason is observed, then you won't have shit like this. You won't have people covering their mouths with tape. You won't have people complaining. And even before that, I was saying that I hesitated to come up with any sort of strata or system, because people will, even if you were to come up with like the logic team or the logic club, then in time that would be corrupted and taken over by exactly the people that you're fighting, and they would start using that as a means to slander any enemies, any dissent, anybody actually.
Whatever they started off with, it would end up like petrified wood, which, as you know, is just pure stone. There's no wood left in it anywhere, although it looks like wood.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
dead dogma. Dogmatism, as you say.
Yeah. So the only, at this point, these are just verbal ejaculations. At this point, I don't really know what I'm ultimately driving at, but these are ideas that I want people to hear. And I have a Google Hangout.
I think I see the direction you're moving in, even if it's not clear what you're ultimately driving at. You're moving in a certain direction, and I think I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've lost my train of thought. Nick, you made me lose my train of thought. Well, where was I going?
Boy.
What was I saying?
Oh, we were talking about the Julie Bindle article.
Right. Well, I guess what I really, the main thing I wanted to say was that these people, they can't keep their mouths shut. Pardon me. They can't keep their mouths shut forever. They are like a whale, which has to periodically surface to breathe and to blow its spout. I mean, a whale's got to do what a whale's got to do, okay? And these people are no different. They've got to occasionally come out into the public and make themselves seen. They've got to surface occasionally. And this is a pattern I've noticed. They're an embarrassment. They give the game away. They reveal feminism for what it is. They rip the mask off. And they cannot be permanently kept under the ground or under the water.
Yeah, and the fact that they stay hidden for so long, like I've known these people in personal life. When you catch them, talking their shit in front of everybody, maybe they'll kind of cool it for a little while. They'll kind of run dark for a little while. But as you say, they can't do it forever. They have to show their true colors eventually. That's
the need for self-expression. I mean, any fanatic can relate to that. They have something that they want to say. It's boiling inside of them, and they can't clamp the lid down forever, or they will explode. Yeah. They've got to vent one way or the other, and they've got to do it publicly. And also, I think this business of doing it publicly serves a metabolic function or organic function, in that it communicates to others, like-minded people out there, that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're able to say these things publicly, in the pages of The Guardian, for example, Well, boy, that shows how powerful it is.
Yeah.
You've got to flaunt. You've got to transmit your power.
And it actually comes back to what you were saying at the beginning of this program. You were saying that we're eradication of feminism, getting rid of it for good. I actually don't want that.
No, nor do I. I didn't mean to say. I don't think I used the word eradication. I think
no, but
it can be driven into a corner.
yeah, and that's the thing, is that I want it to stick around because I don't want it to be forgotten. I don't want people to forget what it is we're dealing with. I want there to be a living example that people can interact with on their own, so they can understand. So they can always understand firsthand. I don't want because oftentimes, like with the Sex Pistols and the punk rockers in the '70s, they would walk around wearing swastika T-shirts, not because they were white nationalists themselves, but because their parents really hated the Nazis, and they knew that was an offensive symbol. And I don't want something to be gone and forgotten. I want it to stick around, so that people can know what it is for themselves. But I sure as shit don't want it in power. I don't want it setting policy. I don't want it informing the police and the media and the government and academia and all that.
Well, yeah. When you say eradicate or go away, it's not going to go away. I don't think we have to worry about that. I think what we do have to worry about is that it will be pushed so far underground and squashed and squelched so much that it never has any chance to express itself. And then then it passes into collective oblivion, and it's able to gather its forces and grow again.
Yeah.
Like the dark shadow of Mordor.
Yeah.
This shadow is banished and it goes somewhere else and assumes a new form and grows again.
Yeah.
And we want to keep it somewhere in a balance, in a kind of a halfway zone where it doesn't totally go away, but where it no longer has its power, it no longer has its fangs, but we want it to be talking anyway. We want it to be just enough present, just enough there in the world that we can point to it and use it as a morality tale. And people can occasionally go and sharpen their teeth on it. If it goes away too much, it's going to come back. If it's in power, well, we don't want that. So we got to keep it sort of in the middle there, I think.
Well, yeah, just keep it around. I mean, like the best analog I can draw is like, and I know like bitter old racists in Arkansas who are still pissed off that that racism isn't kosher anymore. They're still around, and they still get laughed at as backward.
And they still get treated as being a far greater force in the world than they are.
Yeah, and of course, and this is another thing, is I've said this before on the program. I don't like the way racism. I don't. On the one hand, I want feminism to fall into the same disrepute that racism is in now, even though I don't really like the way racism is now, because, or I don't like the way people the regard that racism is held in now, because it's dogmatic, right? People, everybody understands that racism is bad, but nobody really understands why.
Why it is bad, yes.
And
it's a knee-jerk thing. It's a reflex thing.
Yeah, and
it's putting an electrode to the leg of a dead frog and watching it kick.
Yeah, and as much as I would like to see reason, like I said before, reason be the last word and everything, that's a bit of a tall order. You got a lot of people who really like things simplified, dumbed down, dogmatic. Hey
man, I love me a good spaghetti western.
And so failing some kind of revolution of the logos, or some kind of logic revolution, just putting feminism in the place of racism right now so that people do largely have a dogmatic negative reaction to it. That would be the next best thing, and I think that's a more realistic goal. Um, because I mean, some other big stupid dogma will flare up and take its place, I'm sure, but uh, that's kind of the nature of the beast, right? It's kind of
Yes, and
the whole.
the warriors. I'm sorry, the truth warriors of the Pan Logos will be there to fight it again in whatever form it takes. When the shadow of Mordor comes in and reconstitutes itself, some of us will be there to fight it again.
Yeah. So, yeah, but yeah, to bring things back, you were saying that they can't run dark forever. They have to come up for air. They have to show everyone. As I like to put it, the stupidity inside them is just begging to show the world itself in all its glory. And it does that. And when it
If
does,
they're ever going to take over, I mean, they will at some point have to show themselves in all their glory, because if they get to the end goal that they desire, they will every day be showing themselves in all of their glory. And if they're going to make any stages along that road, they're going to have to reveal themselves more and more.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? I say when they do, we got to help them. They try
You
to.
got to encourage them.
Yeah, that's the fundamental difference. They take our platforms away from us. When we put up posters, they tear them down. When we hold conferences, they try to get them shut down. They don't want people to hear what we have to say. Conversely, when they have a slut walk, I show up with Lauren Southern and a professional camera, because I want everyone to see the stupid shit that comes out of their mouth.
I think that's a good strategy. I think we're on the right road.
Yeah.
Anyway, got one more thing I'd like to share here. We got about another 25 minutes in the 2-hour time slot before we hit the brick wall of death. So, got another link. This is to an article that was recently put up on AVFM. Oh, wait a minute. No, but before I get there, there's another link before that. I forgot about it. This is also in relation to the radical feminists. Apparently, speaking of the whale not being able to stay submerged forever, they're having a big radfem collective conference. I think it's in England. And this is linked Q number 3 on your list. So let's just take a quick look at that, touch upon that briefly. Radfem Collective. Radfems Resist 2015. That's the name of their conference, the Radfems Resist. Saturday, September 12th. That's less than a week from now. Saturday, September 12th, 2015, in London, United Kingdom. So this is similar to radical feminist conferences that we've heard about in the past, that we're all familiar with.
Boy, I gotta tell Dr. Randomer Camp about that.
Definitely. Calling all radical women to come together to celebrate and enjoy a weekend of talks, workshops, and radical feminist thought, with talks from Janice Raymond, Betty McClellan, Julia Bindle, there you go, our friend Julia Bindle, Marina Strinkovsky, Sarah Deatum, and Liz Kelly. And workshops on topics including feminist motherhood. That's the kind of motherhood where fatherhood is nowhere in the picture, I'm assuming. Heterosexuality and radical feminism. Fiona Davidson and Beverly Anderson. Radical feminism, rebellion or revolution. Well, I think we all know it's revolution and not rebellion. Tomboys not allowed. Femininity and male subordination of girls and young women. What do they mean by tomboys not allowed? I think the best kind of female, generally speaking, in this world is the tomboy type. That's my personal opinion. I can't make out if these people are approving of tomboys or disapproving. Anyway, Amnesty International and beyond. So let's seize the moment. Okay, see, they're trying to worm their way into the international NGO scene there. Decolonizing our minds through lesbian and feminist culture. And then finally, this is a good one, ISIS, Islam, and women's resistance. And boy, I wish I could be a fly on the wall at that. But anyway, that's one of your links on your queue list. So you can go there and look at that. And when you get there, you'll find links to a whole bunch of other things. So there's something to keep you busy there, keep you out of trouble. And it'll get you into a different kind of trouble, maybe. Now, I would like to turn to the last link on your queue list. This would be queue number 4. This is an article recently went up on AVFM. This was posted by Paul Elam. Men's Mental Health Network launches Raising the Bar on Advocacy for Men. I'm just going to read through this quickly. For years, we have documented the varying areas of life in which men and boys bear the brunt of discrimination and sexism in our family courts, domestic violence services, law enforcement, criminal justice system, genital integrity, education, and a host of other areas. Men and boys are systematically shortchanged. The mental health industry is one of the most brutal and culpable forces concerning these issues. Countless social workers and psychologists turn a blind eye to the genital mutilation of boys and the science proving its detrimental effect on its victims. There are perhaps an even greater number of mental health professionals who knowingly and unknowingly operate under tainted research. Tainted research. I like that. Knowingly and unknowingly operate under tainted research and a false narrative about domestic violence. These individuals often actively work to prevent male victims and their children from accessing services either through malicious intent or willful ignorance. A pernicious and destructive sexism pervades the mental health industry. It operates unchallenged behind a facade of false objectivity, false inclusiveness, and false compassion. Sadly, the mental health industry is ignorant of even the most basic differences between men and women in the ways we process emotions. Men are often expected to emote like women. When they don't, they're judged as deficient. Well, I could wrap this up by saying that women like to talk about how they feel, and men like to do something to make themselves feel better. I know that talking about my feelings is, I think, a waste of time. I just want to feel better. And if I feel good, I say, hey, I feel good. Now let's talk about something more interesting. And if I feel bad, I want to do something so I don't feel bad anymore. But in either case, talking about your feelings, waste of time.
Well, hold on. You know, like, one of the things I will say is that in rehab we had group therapy, and we were taught we had to open up every session. We had to identify ourselves, say my name is Nick, and then say how you were feeling. And there was a list of words that were called 7-Eleven words. So good, bad, happy, sad. Those weren't sufficient. Oh, sorry. Those weren't sufficient.
Those weren't sufficient.
No, you had to, because they weren't. You had to. The exercise was in identifying your emotions, and you know what? I think that there is something to be said for that. I think that knowing what your emotional state is, I think that while people like this maybe push it a bit too far, I mean, these same people were telling me that I shouldn't intellectualize things so much and maybe feel things out a bit more. And I'm, but at the same time, like, they didn't, I didn't have a problem. I demonstrated that I didn't have a problem talking about my emotions. When things made me angry, I got angry, and just to, I'm not going to say it was just to placate them. When I talked about things that bothered me emotionally, things that I knew would make me cry, I cried freely. yeah, there is. Well, I think that certain people push emotions too far. They certainly put emotion. They give emotion too much importance to the point of eclipsing reason. I think there's something to be said for being a bit more conscious of your feelings. Um, what kind of how exactly you feel at the moment, and being mindful of that.
In a therapeutic setting under the guiding of an ethical professional person, no, I have no problem with that sort of thing. The problem I do have with that sort of thing is that that kind of thinking, that kind of philosophy in general, has gotten into the hands of some very unscrupulous people who use it as a tool to manipulate other people. That's where I have a problem, big time.
Yeah, yeah, they're telling people, yeah, don't use logic so much. Don't use the brick of logic to smash a girl's head in when she's talking about her feelings, stuff like that.
Don't point out the nail. It's not about the nail.
Yeah, yeah, it's about the way they feel about whatever. Yeah,
But
people who seek to erode logic to the point of communicating almost purely on intuition are con men 100% of the time.
they're worse than con men. They are totalitarians, and they're, I won't say Nazis, but they're as bad. Uh, Totalitarian, I think, is the key word. Using psychology, open up, get in touch with your feelings. They're using that as a crowbar to break and enter into your soul. Okay? And that's where I draw a really hard line. That's where I slam the door on their hand. Okay? And this business about men are out of touch with their feelings. I don't want to hear anybody say that ever again. Nobody has any business to tell anybody else they're out of touch with their feelings. The authority on your feelings, is you and nobody else. And if you want to talk to an ethical professional to sort your stuff out, nothing wrong with that. But when the therapeutic model of thinking begins to penetrate the culture at large and begins to even flavor things like government policy, when it becomes all pervading, it becomes part of a totalitarian machine in the larger culture. And then it is extremely dangerous and toxic and evil when it gets to that stage.
Yeah, case in point, basically a woman is raped if she feels she's been raped. People are oppressed if they feel they've been oppressed.
And when you go, if you're a man who's been falsely accused of domestic violence and they put you into a Duluth program, you've got to go in there and spill your guts, and you can't argue. You can't deny. They are there to insert a crowbar and break into your soul and reprogram you. Okay. All of this stuff, this wonderful feel-good stuff, has a dark side, which we mustn't ignore. And that cancer just goes off in so many different directions. We could sit here and talk about it for hours. But I'd like to move along with reading the article here. This doesn't go too much longer. Men are often expected to emote like women. When they don't, they're judged as deficient. These facts and many more have created an unambiguous need for change in the helping professions. The Men's Mental Health Network is the first major step toward making that happen. Our mission statement and promise. The Men's Mental Health Network provides an alternative to the mainstream mental health profession, which has grown increasingly sexist and indifferent to the problems faced by men and boys. We will apply for our 100-plus years of collective expertise in men's issues to develop and provide training material for other mental health professionals. We will apply our 100-plus years of collective expertise, etc., etc. Okay. And All right, at launch, we will provide direct services in the areas of grief and loss, high conflict relationships, addictions, and men with disabilities. This is only the beginning. We are presently consulting with other mental health professionals who practice without disparaging assumptions. Without disparaging assumptions. Good phrase, disparaging assumptions about men and boys. These professionals understand the current aberrant shortcomings of the mental health field. Upon thorough vetting, we will add these professionals to a public directory. The ultimate goal is to provide a comprehensive international mental health network in which both online and offline services are available. The importance of that is difficult to overstate. When people seek relief from the helping professions and are instead given political ideology, here we go. This is what I was talking about a minute ago. When people seek relief from the helping professions and are instead given political ideology, it is an abuse of their trust. There is a reason so many men roll their eyes at the mention of therapy and counseling. It is the same reason they are far less likely than women to reach out for help. Their suspicions are 100% justified. They are telling us quite clearly that the mental health field must change, not the men. The Men's Mental Health Network is the first earnest attempt to answer them. As the Men's Mental Health Network directory grows and solidifies, our next objective is to create and provide authorized continuing education and training for mental health professionals. It will be designed completely on evidence-based clinical need, not political correctness. We will target under-recognized and often ignored areas of study such as misandry and gynocentrism. This training is intended to confront and scrutinize already faulty beliefs held by so many in the mental health field. Additionally, we will adopt a very public role in challenging many mental health institutions and individuals by calling attention to sexist and harmful practices. We will not shy from nor let pass any entity or individual who is part of the problem. Men and their problems have long been ignored, minimized, and even ridiculed by the mainstream mental health industry. Today marks the beginning of corrective action. We start by building a network of professionals who don't view men as the default problem and have both comprehension of and compassion for their struggles. We will turn that platform into a beacon of light that challenges the rampant discrimination against men in the mental health field and force an end to the empathy gap, or empathy apartheid, that now plagues men and boys at the most vulnerable moments in their lives. Please visit the site and join our mailing list. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest. If you want to offer further support, please make use of our donation button to help us reach their goals. Signed, etc., etc. Signed, Paul Elam, Peter Wright, Tom Golden, and Tara Palmatier. So, sounds good. It is a network of on-side therapists. I presume people like Tara Palmatier and Tom Golden and so on. And they're out there, scattered across the landscape like points of light. And this is just a project to link them together into a central conspiracy, if you will. And this is a direct and very serious attack upon the feminist power structure. Not only is it good for men, but it attacks the feminist power structure. And me being a strict anti-feminist, I am interested in anything that attacks and undermines the feminist power structure. And that's why I support things that are good for men, because by supporting things that are good for men, you're doing something that's not so good for feminism. So everybody go read that article and reflect upon it and celebrate it and, well, be happy to see that such things are happening. Nick, anything you want to add? We're getting pretty close to the brick wall of death now, so we got to wrap it up.
No, just that I'm glad to see that. You know, again, after my experience there, like a lot of like when they started telling us when they started in the workshops that we were in, when they started giving us stuff that was obviously feminist indoctrination. Like I wasn't the only one. Like I kind of I challenged the stuff about men and women being only being different because of socialization, but other guys rolled their eyes at that stuff too. Uh, you know,
But
it's
they didn't speak up the way you did, right?
well, no, I don't think that like they're not consciously aware of this stuff. Like I had been opposed to this stuff for a long time before I found the men's rights movement or any anti-feminist coordinated anti-feminist effort online.
Yeah.
Uh, um,
Okay, those guys have got to repeat a popular expression here. They've got the attitude, but guys like you and me have got the analysis.
yeah, that's exactly what it is, and I mean it's because bullshit. People have bullshit detectors. I mean,
Or crap detectors, as Ernest Hemingway would say.
and feminists, like they are pushing bullshit. Like when they were saying, like when they were giving, they try to make it sound as sensitive as possible. Coming back to the sort of the theme that you were touching on at the beginning here is that like no matter how fluffy and fun they try to make feminism, like the way they try to pitch it now is that it's because of traditions that men are so they're only allowed to express a very narrow range of emotions and all this and cultural influences and stuff like that. And, and there was a guy there. He's a pretty there was another guy in the class and he goes, so what? What's the answer? Be more feminine? like
Good
uh,
answer. I like that.
like, and he was a pretty jockey type too, right? Like he wasn't like he wasn't an intellectual. He's a smart guy, but
I know.
there's raw intelligence and there's being an intellectual, and he wasn't an intellectual. But he didn't seem at all initiated with this stuff. But I mean, when he started hearing it. Because he was about my age or maybe a bit younger, but I know that I was tired of hearing it in grade fucking 3. Like it's obvious nonsense. It's obviously telling you that you're as a man you are defective. That's what it comes
As a
down to.
man, you're the problem. That's
Yeah,
core to feminism right there. Men are the problem.
yeah, and no. And just we're closing up here, but Marking Bad says, I'm considered to be highly masculine, but I'm still emotionally expressive. Yeah, so am I. So was Captain Kirk back in the 60s. So was fucking William Shakespeare, B.B. King, Marilyn Manson, uh, who was that little nerd on Family Matters? Steve Urkel. Across all of I mean, maybe it's a tradition. Like traditionally, men have had a hard time expressing themselves in like Japanese culture and British culture, but so did the women in those cultures. And also, there's nothing necessarily bad about stoicism. There's something
No,
to be
not at
said.
all.
There's something to be said for stoicism.
If you
Uh,
see a briar up on the road in front of you, pick it up and cast it to the wayside and walk on.
yeah, some people are emotionally expressive, and some people are not that expressive. And sometimes it can be healthy to be stoic, and it can be unhealthy to be stoic, and sometimes it can be healthy to be overly emotive, and unhealthy to be overly emotive. It is far more nuanced than these people are making it out to be.
It is. There are plenty of nuances, plenty of variables that need to be taken into account here. We're coming up to the brick wall of death, so time to wind it down.
Uh,
Everybody, everybody, we have an email address at the Vanguard Report. That is Vanguard Report, one word, Vanguard Report at USA.com. Send your love mail, your hate mail, and your meh mail. Send it there. And let's wrap up episode number 62 of the Vanguard Report. as we always say, as we never get tired of saying, Nick, do you know what I'm going to say next?
Feminism is the problem.
No, Nick.
Feminism is what we say it is.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick. Feminism is what we say it is. Boy, we could do a whole episode just cracking open that particular walnut of thought and exploring what's inside of it. Feminism.
And as always, Men's Rights Edmonton. If you're in Edmonton, if you're around Edmonton, if you know anyone in or around Edmonton who wants to hang out with me, have them drop me a line, or drop me a line yourself.
Yes, mensrightsedmonton.com. And one more time, feminism is what we say it is. Everybody, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next week for episode number 63 of the Vanguard Report. Take care.